Private First Class Emma Wilson stumbled out of the obstacle course at Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, her uniform soaked with sweat and mud as she bent over gasping for air. The 20-foot rope climb had defeated her again, just like every other physical challenge in the past 8 weeks of Marine Corps training. Around her, other recruits continued pushing through the course while she stood there, defeated and ready to quit. Which city are you watching from? Share it in the comments. Maybe someone else from your city is here too. And if you believe heroes can appear in the most unexpected ways, hit subscribe and give this video a like. Wilson, drill instructor Staff Sergeant Martinez's voice cut through the morning air, like a razor. What the hell was that supposed to be? I've seen dead fish move with more purpose than you just did on that rope. Emma wiped mud from her face, her hands shaking from exhaustion and something deeper. This was the third training event she'd failed to complete this week. Yesterday it was the combat fitness test. The day before, she'd dropped out of the 15-mile conditioning hike with a full pack. At this rate, she'd be recycled or discharged before ever earning the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. I can't do this anymore, Staff Sergeant Emma said quietly, her voice barely audible over the sound of other recruits continuing their training. I want to request administrative separation. Staff Sergeant Martinez stared at her with a mixture of disappointment and disgust. Wilson, in 15 years of making Marines, I have never seen someone with less heart than you. You quit when things get hard. You give up when your body gets tired. You don't have what it takes to wear this uniform. What Staff Sergeant Martinez didn't know was that Emma's constant failures weren't due to lack of ability. They were calculated performances designed to hide the most dangerous secret in her military record. Emma Wilson wasn't really a struggling recruit. She was Gunnery Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, Force Reconnaissance Marine with 7 years of special operations experience and 12 classified direct action missions across 4 combat zones. But 8 months ago, Elena had been declared killed in action during a classified mission in Yemen. Her Force Recon team had been inserted deep behind enemy lines to gather intelligence on terrorist weapons caches, and the mission had gone catastrophically wrong when they were ambushed by a much larger enemy force. Official records showed her as missing and presumed dead after she was separated from her team during a firefight. In reality, Elena had been captured and held prisoner for 4 months before executing a solo escape that required her to travel over 200 miles through hostile territory to reach friendly forces. The psychological trauma from her captivity and the classified nature of her escape had led Marine Corps intelligence to offer her a choice: medical retirement with full benefits and a new identity, or return to active duty under deep cover to investigate suspected security breaches within Marine Special Operations. She had chosen the mission, accepting a new identity as Emma Wilson, a struggling recruit whose constant failures would make her invisible while she documented evidence of classified information being leaked from Marine Corps Special Operations training facilities. For the past 2 months, Elena had been enduring the humiliation of failing basic Marine Corps training while secretly investigating threats to the very community she had served with distinction. Someone with access to Force Recon operational schedules and training protocols was selling intelligence to terrorist organizations, and her job was to identify the source before more Marines died. The irony was devastating. She was one of the Corps' most elite operators, pretending to be the worst recruit in her training company while watching her Marine brothers treat her with contempt. Every failed obstacle course, every dropped pack during conditioning hikes, every moment of manufactured weakness was part of an elaborate cover designed to protect the Marines she loved. But maintaining this facade was destroying her psychologically. Elena had spent years as part of an elite team, where excellence and brotherhood were everything. Now she had to watch junior Marines mock her failures while she gathered evidence against people who were betraying Marine Corps values and getting her brothers killed in combat. The administrative separation request that Staff Sergeant Martinez was now processing would actually provide perfect cover for her next phase of intelligence gathering. The separation process required multiple interviews with senior staff, including Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, the training battalion commander who was one of her primary suspects for the intelligence leaks. As Emma walked toward the battalion headquarters building, still covered in mud from her latest failure, she mentally reviewed the evidence she had gathered against Hayes. He had been asking unusual questions about Force Recon deployment schedules during staff meetings. His personal computer had been accessing classified databases outside his normal duties, and intelligence intercepts had identified a Marine officer selling operational information to terrorist networks through encrypted communications. The battalion headquarters was busy with the usual mixture of administrative processing and training coordination. Emma reported to the duty desk, maintaining her defeated, exhausted demeanor as she requested to begin separation proceedings. "Another quitter, huh?" the duty NCO said with barely concealed contempt. "Colonel Hayes will see you in his office in 10 minutes. Try not to embarrass the Corps any more than you already have." Elena's pulse quickened slightly. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes was her primary suspect, and this face-to-face interview could provide the final evidence she needed to close her investigation. She maintained her defeated recruit persona as she was escorted to Hayes's office, but her mind was already cataloging every detail of the headquarters' security procedures and computer access points. Colonel Hayes entered his office carrying a secure tablet computer and wearing the confident expression of someone accustomed to dealing with failed recruits. He was in his mid-40s, with gray hair and the kind of casual authority that came from years of Marine Corps leadership. "Private Wilson," he said, reviewing her fabricated training record. "Staff Sergeant Martinez reports that you've been struggling with every aspect of Marine Corps training. Tell me why you think you should be allowed to quit when other Marines are fighting and dying for our country." Elena delivered the cover story she had memorized, describing fictional personal problems and physical limitations that made Marine Corps service impossible. As she spoke, she watched Hayes's reaction carefully, looking for any signs that he suspected her true identity. But what she saw instead confirmed her worst suspicions. On his secure tablet, partially hidden by official documents, she could see what appeared to be Force Recon operational planning materials. Not just any materials, but classified mission briefings that were restricted to special operations personnel only. And as he moved the tablet, she caught a glimpse of Arabic text in the document margins. Hayes was translating classified Force Recon intelligence for terrorist handlers. "Private Wilson, the Marine Corps doesn't need quitters," Hayes was saying, apparently unaware that his security breach had been detected. "I'm going to recommend you for immediate administrative discharge with a general under honorable conditions designation." Elena nodded, maintaining her defeated recruit act while her mind processed the implications. Hayes wasn't just accessing classified information, he was actively providing it to terrorist organizations that were killing Marines in combat. And if he was processing her discharge, it meant her cover identity was about to be terminated, potentially ending her investigation before she could gather enough evidence for prosecution. She needed to extend her access to Hayes without raising suspicion, which meant she had to create a delay in the separation process. But before she could respond, the building's emergency alert system began blaring. "All personnel, this is not a drill. We have hostile forces approaching the base perimeter. All Marines report to emergency battle stations immediately." Through the office window, Elena could see Marine security teams racing toward the main gate while helicopters lifted off from the airfield. Hayes quickly secured his tablet and grabbed his rifle from the weapon rack. "Wilson, report to the admin building basement for shelter. You're not trained for combat operations." But as Hayes moved toward the door, he made a critical mistake. In his haste to respond to the emergency, he left his secure tablet on his desk, the screen still unlocked and displaying classified Force Recon documents with Arabic translations clearly visible. Elena was alone in the office with direct evidence of treason against the United States Marine Corps. Her cover identity demanded that she report to the shelter as ordered and maintain her role as a failed recruit. But her real identity as a Force Recon Marine demanded that she secure this evidence and protect her brothers in arms from further compromise. The emergency alerts were getting more urgent. Through the radio chatter echoing in the hallways, she could hear fragments of the situation. Unknown vehicles approaching the base. Armed individuals detected. Multiple breach points. All Marines to combat stations. Elena made her decision. She photographed the tablet screen with a concealed camera, documenting the classified Force Recon information and Arabic translations. Then she secured the tablet in evidence lock position and prepared to pursue Hayes. But as she moved toward the door, she heard voices approaching in the hallway. Colonel Hayes left his tablet, someone was saying. I'll bring it to him at the command post. Elena had seconds to make a choice. She could maintain her cover and let the evidence disappear, potentially allowing Hayes to continue compromising Force Recon operations and getting Marines killed, or she could blow her cover to stop a traitor and protect national security. The voices were getting closer. Through the window, she could see the base emergency response building as Marine infantry units deployed to defensive positions. And somewhere out there, Marines were preparing to fight an enemy that might already know their exact positions and capabilities thanks to Hayes's intelligence leaks. Elena stripped off her muddy utility blouse and used it to wrap the tablet, protecting the evidence. Then she opened the office window and climbed out onto the exterior ledge of the headquarters building. From her position on the building's exterior, she could see Hayes at the base command post, speaking urgently into his personal cell phone while Marine commanders coordinated the defense. He was speaking in what sounded like Arabic, clearly providing real-time intelligence to the attacking forces. But then the situation became critical. Through her earpiece, which had been disguised as a hearing aid throughout her cover assignment, Elena heard Marine tactical radio traffic that made her blood freeze. The attacking force wasn't just conducting a probe or demonstration. They were executing a coordinated assault using detailed knowledge of base security procedures and defensive positions. Her Force Recon brothers were about to fight an enemy that knew exactly where they would be positioned. Elena's cover identity demanded that she remain hidden and continue gathering evidence. But her loyalty to the Marine Corps demanded immediate action, regardless of the consequences to her mission. She made her choice. Elena dropped from the building exterior and landed in the command post area, her sudden appearance causing several Marines to stop and stare. She was still covered in mud from her failed obstacle course, still wearing the torn utilities of a struggling recruit, and still supposed to be a failed Marine hiding in a basement shelter. "Colonel Hayes," she called out, her voice carrying a new tone of authority that made him turn around in shock. "Wilson, what are you doing here? You were ordered to report to the shelter." Elena walked directly toward him, her posture and movement suddenly displaying the confidence and precision of someone with years of elite combat experience. "Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, you're under arrest for providing classified Marine Corps intelligence to terrorist organizations." Hayes laughed, genuinely confused. "Wilson, you're having some kind of breakdown. You're a failed recruit who can't even climb a rope. Security." But Elena was already moving. In one fluid motion, she disarmed the security Marine who responded to Hayes's call, secured his weapon, and had Hayes in a compliance hold before anyone could react. Her movements were so fast and professional that the entire command post fell silent. "My name is Gunnery Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, 1st Force Reconnaissance Company," she announced to the assembled Marines. "Colonel Hayes is a terrorist intelligence asset who has been compromising Force Recon operational security. I have documented evidence of his espionage activities." Hayes struggled against her hold. "This is insane. She's a recruit. She's been failing every training event for weeks." Elena smiled grimly. "The training failures were part of my cover identity while investigating security breaches in this command. As for my actual capabilities," she released Hayes into the custody of arriving security personnel, then moved to the tactical communication station where Marine units were reporting enemy contact. Without hesitation, she began coordinating defensive positions using advanced tactical knowledge that no basic recruit should possess. "Second platoon, shift your positions 30 meters north. The enemy has your current coordinates. First squad, establish overwatch on the eastern approach. They're trying to flank through the training area." The Marines at the command post watched in amazement as the failed recruit who couldn't complete an obstacle course began directing a sophisticated base defense with the expertise of a seasoned combat veteran. 20 minutes later, the attack was repelled. The enemy forces, deprived of the real-time intelligence Hayes had been providing, were unable to exploit their planned routes and were driven off by Marine defenders who had repositioned based on Elena's tactical guidance. Colonel Martinez, the base commanding officer, arrived at the command post as Hayes was being taken into custody. He stared at Elena, who stood there still covered in mud, but radiating the unmistakable presence of an elite warrior. Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez, Colonel Martinez said, I think you and I need to have a very classified conversation about why a Force Recon Marine has been pretending to be a failing recruit for the past 2 months. Elena nodded, finally able to drop the defeated recruit persona she had maintained for weeks. Sir, Operation Silent Overwatch was authorized at the highest levels of Marine Corps intelligence. Colonel Hayes has been providing Force Recon operational intelligence to terrorist networks for at least 8 months. And the training failure. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Sir, sometimes the best way to be invisible is to convince everyone you're not worth watching. 4 days later, Elena sat in a classified briefing room at Marine Corps Forces Special Operations Command headquarters, back in her Force Recon uniform with the ribbons and decorations that marked her as one of the Corps' most elite operators. Across from her, General Thompson reviewed the intelligence she had gathered during her undercover assignment. Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez, your investigation has uncovered not just Hayes but an entire network of compromised personnel providing intelligence to terrorist organizations. The information they obtained could have resulted in the deaths of dozens of Marines in upcoming operations. Elena nodded. Sir, the hardest part wasn't maintaining my cover or pretending to fail training events. It was watching my fellow Marines treat me with contempt while I documented evidence against people who were getting Marines killed in combat. And now we dismantle the entire network. Hayes kept detailed records of his contacts and payment schedules. We've identified terrorist intelligence assets at 2 other Marine installations, all using administrative or training access to obtain classified information. General Thompson closed the file. Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez, what you accomplished over the past 2 months represents some of the finest counterintelligence work in Marine Corps history. You not only exposed a major security breach, but you prevented a successful attack on this installation. Elena stood, adjusting her uniform. Sir, that's what Force Recon Marines do. We gather intelligence, we eliminate threats, and we protect our brothers. Whether we're operating behind enemy lines or pretending to fail obstacle courses. As she left the briefing room, Elena passed the training area where she had spent weeks pretending to struggle with basic Marine Corps skills. A new class of recruits was conducting physical training, and she could hear a drill instructor encouraging a struggling Marine. Don't quit when it gets hard, the instructor was shouting. The Corps needs Marines who push through when others give up. Failure is not an option. Elena smiled, remembering her own real Force Recon training years earlier. The instructor was right. Failure wasn't an option, but sometimes the best way to succeed was to convince everyone you were failing. Outside the training area, the California sun stretched across Camp Pendleton, where Elena had spent 2 months pretending to be the worst recruit in Marine Corps history. The emergency was over, the traitor was in custody, and Marine Corps operational security was restored. But for Elena, this was just another successful mission in her service to the Force Recon community and the country she had sworn to protect. Tomorrow, there would be another assignment, another cover identity, and another chance to protect the Marines who operated in the shadows. The only difference was that next time, she hoped her cover story didn't involve failing rope climbs and disappointing drill instructors. As she walked toward the Classified Operations Center for her next briefing, Elena reflected on the past 2 months of playing a struggling recruit. Being underestimated had been her greatest weapon. While everyone was focused on her apparent failures, she had been protecting the real warriors who served the Marine Corps with distinction. The mission was complete. Hayes was in military custody, his terrorist network was being dismantled, and the intelligence leaks that had threatened Force Recon operations were finally stopped. For Gunnery Sergeant Elena "Ghost" Rodriguez, Force Reconnaissance Marine, it was just another day of being the hero hidden behind a facade of failure.